Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Drake C. Toll, locked on Big 12. Do we finally have a pause in the realignment talk? Well, at least not today. We're going to talk about it again. Drake, just monumental news with Florida State and Clemson settling. We're going to go back and forth on this one a little bit, but with the ACC, I do want to get your big picture thoughts on this, and then we'll kind of maybe pass it back and forth a bit. But what was your initial reaction when you heard that the settlement came down?
Well, you put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, great. You get 2 more years, 3 more years of Florida State, but have officially solidified that the Noles shouldn't be in the ACC come 2030 or when that price tag drops far below what it was for even Oklahoma and Texas to leave the Big 12 when they did. And you think about the way inflation's going, that $60 million or $70 million, whatever it's going to be in 2030, will be even smaller for Florida State based on where we are there. And I am very happy from a Big 12 perspective that the ACC decided, you know what, let's piss off Louisville and Virginia Tech and Virginia and Duke and even North Carolina by creating this new viewership algorithm to pay Clemson and Florida State a whole lot more money than anybody else and get them close to the SEC and the Big Ten. And there will be other schools that lose $7 million a year from their revenue and won't be able to afford that, especially as the NCAA will be asking each school to pay $20 million to their student athletes directly. In a time where everyone needs money, the ACC is taking money out of the pockets of some of its schools and giving Florida State and Clemson even more money to leave the league if they want to. Big picture, Band-Aid, bullet hole. This is not going to work in 5 years, but today, for at least today, from my view, Florida State and Clemson are still in the ACC, and I guess that counts for today.
Yeah, no, I've heard different takes on this. Obviously, I have a very vested interest, but even taking, I'll tell you, a month ago, things seemed bleak. You know, ESPN signed their ACC agreement. As a Florida State guy, you're thinking, oh my gosh, maybe we are just truly in this thing forever. And are we going to be pigeonholed into a settlement that's not great for us? And we just take it because it's the best we got, right? As a Florida State fan, obviously the scenario existed that you get out tomorrow and that Bama opener is really against a conference foe, or that Clemson opener against LSU is a conference game. Yeah, that would have been just the massive Grand Slam win. None of that was ever really realistic. And so when you look at what could have realistically happened with a settlement, it's hard to not imagine that this wasn't a slam dunk victory for Florida State and Clemson. North Carolina probably in there as well. Miami maybe in there as well. And that's not just the garnet and gold colored glasses. Like, I'm telling you, a month ago, I was bleak on this.
Not to interrupt, I hate to interrupt you, TJ, but this is what, like, when I think of questions for a guy who covers Florida State or covers the ACC, I'm not sure. There are so many analysts, like Jim Phillips, the commissioner, who is like, this is a monumental day. We stay relevant forever. The ACC is as strong as ever. Are they just idiots? I mean, genuinely, can you please explain to me how this would be good in 5 years' time for the ACC? How this would be good for Florida State to stay in the ACC come 2031? I mean, would they even want to?
No, I don't think there's any realistic way. Now, you know, they get to that point and the SEC and the Big Ten say, hey, we'll take you at a half share. Then maybe you have something to think about because of the media, you know, the extra money you're making in the ACC. I don't really see that as plausible, but at the same time, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that what we're doing now is plausible. So I guess anything is possible. Do I think that it's realistic? No. But yeah, like, this is a massive win for Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, maybe some other programs too. But this is not a win for the ACC. Now, it is like you said, a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. They will very likely continue to exist by in 2030 or around that time, pulling in programs like Tulane and Memphis and USF, and they'll stay above the threshold. But I mean, there's a
question there. Can I push back a bit?
Sure.
Again, you're the ACC guy. If they add Tulane and Memphis and USF, right? To me, right now, they're upsetting Louisville and Virginia Tech and NC State by possibly reducing their share because Florida State and Clemson will carry so much. So if those schools want to leave and go somewhere else like the Big 12, can the ACC backfill enough with Memphis and Tulane to still exist as a league in 2031?
Exist, like survive? I think so, right?
Because sure, the Pac-12 technically survived, right? Yeah.
Correct, yeah. There's a best worst case scenario. If you're Louisville, maybe to counter that, Louisville maybe makes a little bit less over the next 5 years, but in 2030, when the Big 12 comes calling for Louisville, and Louisville's looking at, oh, we will get the most revenue now because we get the most eyeballs in this conference at this point. And the ACC ESPN deal is still locked in through 2036. Does that maybe entice a Louisville to stay and be the kings of that conference? Right? Maybe. I don't know. Now, so that's like the best case scenario for the ACC. Hey, Louisville, you get the best views now that our top 4 teams are out. You stick around. You reap the benefits of the Florida State Clemson, debacle or whatever this is. The worst case scenario is the Big 12's media deal is up then too. And so who's to say that with a little bit more, a sweeter pot, that they couldn't entice them to come over? And if they do, Louisville goes, Georgia Tech goes, Virginia Tech goes, Virginia, Duke, whoever, then who's your next best team in the conference? Pitt goes to rekindle the old flame with West Virginia. Who's the next best team, right? Then you're looking at the Boston Colleges, the Syracuses. And so at that point, the ACC is closer to the AAC than they are the Big 12. If the ACC could lure, again, the Louisvilles and the Virginia Techs to stay with the promise of more money because of what's happening, and they're taking Florida State and Clemson's spot, maybe they stay. That's a best case. But a worst case is they say, no, dog, we're out too, because the Big 12 is going to give us X number of dollars, be a better conference. We'll go Louisville could compete and be one of the better teams in the Big 12 too. Why wouldn't they go do it over there? So I do think that there's a best worst case scenario for the ACC. And until we get to 2030, we really have no idea what teams will do.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of speculation over where every team will go. But I think the most pertinent question I would have, if you do have your garnet and gold, is that right? Did I get that right? Am I on the money there? Is that what Florida? Okay. I didn't know that there are always special names for the colors. Right. If you've got those glasses on, is there a way Florida State is still an ACC brand in 2031? Because if they are, then I really think your Louisvilles have decided to leave.
I just don't see how. Right. The only scenario that exists, and we'll get people to comment on this and say, oh, they don't have a spot in the Big Ten. Tony P said this, or Greg Sankey said this, like any commissioner has ever said. Yeah, like we want to add right now. It would shock me. I just don't know how the ACC would come up with enough funds to matter. Even if they were going to get like a 75% share or a 50% share in the Big Ten or the SEC, the numbers there are still just so much bigger. And the ACC is locked into their deal until 2036. So like, there's not going to be just all of a sudden more money in 2030 to entice Florida State again to stay. And then you get to the question of the playoff money that comes in too. Like right now, the average SEC or Big Ten team makes about $8 million more from the college football playoff. In 2026, that number is going to go up to like $12 or $14 million more a year. And so it's not just the media money, it's the access to the playoff. It's the idea of more money coming in from more teams going in because you have so many auto bids. So is there a chance? I mean, I suppose in 2031, Florida State could still be an ACC school. I just don't really see it as plausible right now.
TJ, where can folks find more of your work? That's what it feels like right now. It feels like I took over there for a second. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I love it. College Football Addiction, you can subscribe right here on the channel if you're watching. If you're watching on Drake's channel, then go find us and check us out. What about you? Where can people find your stuff?
At Drake C. Tolan, at LO Big 12 on Twitter, and wherever you find your podcast with Locked On Big 12.
This was maybe the best one we've done. This was good.
So
we've done a lot, but appreciate you, Drake, for joining.
Of course.